So, if you just spent an hour, like, sweating buckets in a 95-degree hot yoga class, right? Holding a plank until your core is literally shaking.
Oh, yeah, just violently shaking.
Exactly. You probably walked out the door thinking, well, I just checked off my major fitness box for the day.
I mean, you felt the burn, right? Your heart rate spiked,
Yeah.
your muscles are totally fatigued.
Right. But according to the source material we're diving into today, you didn't just miss the entire point of the yoga practice.
Yeah.
You actually, you likely short-circuited your nervous system.
Yeah, and completely failed to give your physical body the actual structural conditioning it really needs.
Which is wild to think about. So welcome to today's deep dive. We are deconstructing this massive collision between physical fitness and subtle energy conditioning.
It's such a huge misconception in the modern wellness space right now.
Oh, for sure. Because society is chronically starved for time. So we just, we try to compress everything.
Right. You want the muscle growth of a gym session, the cardio of a run, and the mindfulness of meditation, all shoved into, like, a convenient 45-minute class on your lunch break.
But the physiological reality of the human body just doesn't allow for that kind of multitasking. So to unpack this, we're looking at a highly detailed framework from Osman, who's known online as the blind Muslim yogi.
And Osman's background is just, I mean, it's what makes this perspective so arresting. He's not some franchise studio instructor who took a weekend certification.
No, not at all.
He is a master-level bioenergy healer, an entrepreneur, and a yoga and meditation teacher with literally 50 years of experience.
50 years. And I want to clarify something right up front for the listener because it's a really fascinating aspect of his content. Osman has been permanently blind, but only since May of 2023.
Right, which is quite recent.
Yeah, so if you watch his videos and hear him describing visual things, things that usually only sighted people can describe, it's because he lived his whole life with normal eyesight right up until 2023.
That's such an important context. And his background in healing is, frankly, on a level you rarely hear about. He has telepathic healing capabilities using principles of quantum entanglement.
Which sounds like science fiction until you see his track record.
Exactly. He specializes in critical care, recovery, and terminal illnesses. And he's been practicing at this incredibly advanced level for decades. He actually attained his first samadhi experience by the age of 19.
At 19?
Yeah.
That's incredible. And he's studied extensively from the Far East, the Middle East, the West. But his core mission, which is so refreshing, is to bring a scientific, result-based, and simplified methodology to these ancient sciences.
Right, because he wants to help current society improve health, peace of mind, relationships, even finances, by unplugging these complex protocols.
And we should mention he offers a totally free 5-minute yoga and meditation program that you can download right now from his website, yogawellness786.com.
Definitely go check that out. The resources on his YouTube channel are entirely free, too. He doesn't withhold any information there.
He really doesn't. He has a Patreon for paid live daily videos and one-on-one consultations, and his energy healing services are, of course, at a premium level with premium pricing.
Which makes sense, given his success rate. I mean, he was practicing up to 18 hours a day at certain points in his life.
18 hours?
Yeah, and even now, he's practicing a minimum of 8 to 10 hours a day just to keep the sword sharp, so to speak.
Right. And he's very clear that his services are complementary. They are not a replacement for medical treatment, but they enhance whatever might be lacking in the traditional medical fields.
Absolutely. So with that massive foundation established, let's look at Osman's primary jarring claim. Right out of the gate, he says, yoga is not a fitness model.
It was never engineered to be a fitness model.
Exactly. To use it as a replacement for physical exercise is fundamentally misusing a highly specialized technology.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate for the listener here. Because if I rely on power yoga for my daily movement, hearing that it isn't fitness sounds, well, absurd. If my heart rate monitor says I'm burning 600 calories and I'm bearing my own body weight through endless flows, my muscles are definitely working.
Oh, they're working, yeah.
So how can Osman argue that this exertion isn't fitness?
Well, it comes down to distinguishing between a byproduct and a primary mechanism. Can you elevate your heart rate while holding complex postures? Sure, absolutely.
Obviously, yeah.
But Osman points out that just because a physiological response happens doesn't mean it's the intended purpose of the protocol. It's like
using a high-end sports car to plow a field, right?
Yes. Perfect analogy.
It has a powerful engine, you might move some dirt, but you're completely ignoring what the machine was actually built for.
Exactly. Yoga involves stretching, sure, but it is emphatically not a practice of stretching or muscular hypertrophy.
So if the muscle fatigue is just a byproduct, what is the actual target here?
The target is internal organ reconditioning,
Ah.
and specifically the intentional manipulation of the vagus nerve.
Okay, the vagus nerve. We hear that term constantly now. It's like the ultimate wellness buzzword.
It really is. Professor Andrew Huberman talks about this constantly on the Huberman Lab podcast.
Right, I was just thinking of his episodes.
Yeah, Huberman often breaks down the autonomic nervous system. He explains how the vagus nerve is the superhighway of your parasympathetic system.
Rest, digest, and repair state.
Exactly. It's the biological brake pedal. Its job is to counteract the sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight response, your accelerator.
So the sympathetic system is what pumps cortisol and adrenaline into your blood when you're lifting heavy weights or, stressing out at work.
Right. And building visible muscle or increasing cardio capacity requires you to actively stress the body. You have to create micro tears in the muscle fibers.
Which triggers an inflammatory response.
Yes, sympathetic arousal. You are intentionally stepping on the gas.
Which brings us to the core conflict. If Osman is saying yoga's true purpose is to stimulate the vagus nerve and hit the brakes.
But you're treating it like a high-intensity boot camp.
Right, you're sending deeply contradictory signals to your brain.
You're creating physiological chaos. Huberman has talked about this kind of autonomic confusion, and it's like trying to fast-charge your phone while running a massive video game on full brightness.
It's technically plugged in, but the battery is just going to overheat. You won't get any restorative charge.
Exactly. When you force yoga to be a severe cardio workout, you stay locked in a high-stress state. You bypass the internal organ massage and the acetylcholine release entirely.
You strip the yoga of its neurological magic just to get a mediocre muscular workout. It's the worst of both worlds.
And you miss Osman's deeper point about subtle energy systems. He argues that yoga was engineered to tone these subtle energies, which requires that parasympathetic environment.
I want to stop right there on the phrase subtle energy systems because, for a listener who tracks their health through data VO2 max, DXA scans, that kind of thing, subtle energy sounds like pseudoscience.
Oh, it definitely sets off alarms for the analytical crowd.
Right. It sounds unmeasurable. So how does Osman ground this concept so a data-driven person can actually engage with it?
Well, this is where his background is so crucial. Osman addresses this by providing a highly structured blueprint of the human entity. He doesn't just wave his hands and say, oh, it's energy.
Yeah, it's not vague at all.
No, he outlines a rigid framework of 5 distinct levels of existence, often called the koshas in ancient sciences.
Let's map those out. What is this architecture?
Layer 1 is the physical body. Flesh, bones, vascular system, the domain of Western medicine.
The hardware.
Right, the hardware. But then layer 2 is the subtle life force energy. And he makes a very specific claim here. This energy isn't just an aura. It actively controls the physical body.
It's the middleman.
Yes, it sits directly above the physical tissue in the chain of command.
And what's above that?
Layer 3 is the mind, your conscious intellect. And Osman defines the flow. The mind controls the subtle energy, and the subtle energy controls the physical body.
Okay, wait. Let's unpack this because mastering this exact chain of command is what Osman says is the foundation of energy healing, right?
Absolutely. The mind intentionally directing the subtle life force. That's the bedrock of his telepathic healing and critical care work.
Which upends how we normally experience our biology. If I pick up a pen, my conscious mind just tells my physical hand to move. I don't feel a subtle energy middleman. Why does this middle layer matter for our health?
Well, think about the Render Show podcast. Beer Biceps frequently interviews yogis and swamis who discuss this exact mechanism. They talk about how ancient Indian sciences mapped out these pathways millennia ago.
Right, the nadis.
Exactly. And modern science is catching up. Look at the fascial network. We used to think fascia was just passive wrapping paper around muscles.
Now we know it's highly conductive.
It's a sensory-rich network, transmitting bioelectrical signals faster than the nervous system and the neuroendocrine system, where invisible chemical messengers dictate cellular behavior.
So what ancient texts called subtle energy maps perfectly onto modern bioelectrical networks?
Yes. Lewis Howes touches on this heavily on the School of Greatness podcast when he interviews people like Dr. Joe Dispenza about mind-body healing. The physical body is just the hardware. The mind is the user interface. But layer 2, the subtle energy, is the operating system.
It's the invisible code translating your tap on the screen into a physical action.
Which means if your phone screen freezes, polishing the glass isn't going to fix a software virus.
Wow, yeah. And that's the limitation of purely physical fitness. If you have a blockage in your subtle energy, say chronic emotional stress is altering your signaling, your physical body will manifest symptoms.
Fatigue, inflammation, digestive issues. And if your only response is to run 10 miles on a treadmill to, quote, sweat it out.
You're just polishing the glass. You're treating the endpoint, not the origin of the signal.
Exactly. Osman argues yoga is the administrative tool designed to debug that layer 2 operating system. It clears the resistance.
So the first three layers, physical, subtle, mind, that feels like a complete system for daily life. But Osman says there are 5 layers. What are we missing?
This is where it gets profound. Beyond the analytical mind, layer 4 is higher intelligence and intuition.
Okay.
And layer 5, the absolute peak, is the soul body or the bliss body. It represents ultimate self-actualization.
Higher intelligence and a soul body. It sounds aspirational, almost utopian.
It does, but Osman attaches a sobering caveat. For the vast majority of people, these top 2 layers are entirely dormant.
They're completely offline.
Yes, because we spend all our energy fixating on the physical body and the relentless chatter of the mind. Osman says we are living on power saver mode. Up to 95% of our potential is just dormant.
Power saver mode. I love that analogy. Think about when your laptop drops to 10% battery. The screen dims, background apps close, the processing speed is throttled.
It strips away high-level function just to keep the basic hardware running.
Is Osman suggesting our normal, everyday baseline consciousness is actually just the dimmed screen of a throttled operating system?
That is exactly what he's saying. And you
Yes.
see the symptoms everywhere. Stephen Bartlett talks about this constantly in the Diary of a CEO podcast. He interviews experts on modern burnout.
Oh, absolutely. The epidemic of decision fatigue.
Right. When you operate only from layer 3, your conscious intellect, you force your brain to analytically process every single variable.
Weighing pros and cons, obsessing over the future.
It requires an exorbitant amount of metabolic energy.
Mel Robbins covers this too on the Mel Robbins podcast. She talks about how our nervous systems are just fried, and we're trying to solve complex life problems using the most energetically expensive tool we have.
Conscious analytical thought. We're trying to download gigabyte files over a dial-up connection.
Because we haven't turned on the broadband router of our higher intelligence.
Yes. Layer 4, intuition, operates differently. It's high-speed pattern recognition. It processes vast amounts of subtle data instantly, bypassing the clunky machinery of conscious thought.
But if you're locked in chronic fight-or-flight stress, your biology deprioritizes that.
Your brain thinks a tiger is chasing you. It doesn't care about your soul body. It just wants your physical legs to run.
So by ignoring subtle energy practices, we actively keep our higher intelligence offline.
Exactly, and this is yoga's true mandate. Yoga and meditation are the mechanisms to plug the system back in. They awaken that higher intelligence, drawing energy up into the 4th and 5th layers.
This maps so well to what Rick Archer explores on Buddha at the gas pump.
Oh, totally.
He interviews ordinary people who have had these profound awakenings, moving into layer 4 and 5 awareness.
And Rick often discusses texts from Swami Sivananda or Paramahansa Yogananda's autobiography of a yogi,
Yes. Yogananda's work is foundational here.
as well as Swami Vivekananda and Ramakrishna. They all detailed this exact architecture long before modern science, and Gopi Krishna's work on the biological mechanisms of subtle energy awakening.
And Dr. Bonnie Greenwell's clinical perspective on those awakenings, it's all pointing to the same truth. We have this dormant hardware. Rainn Wilson talks about this need for a spiritual framework on the Soul Boom podcast, too.
It's a universal requirement, and Osman grounds this in extreme practicality. Activating the bliss body isn't about levitating in a cave.
Right. What is the real-world outcome?
Improved decision-making capacity and profound, durable harmony in your daily life.
Engaging with reality using 100% of your cognitive hardware.
Yes. When intuition is online, your mind doesn't work as hard. When subtle energy flows, your body doesn't break down from stress.
Okay, but this brings up a massive physical roadblock.
Let's hear it.
Say a listener buys into the Osman protocol. They dedicate an hour a day to subtle energy yoga. Their software is pristine. But layer 1, the physical hardware, still exists in a physical world with gravity.
Right. Entropy is real.
If yoga isn't a fitness model, how does Osman suggest we prevent our physical bodies from atrophying?
Well, Osman is aggressively pragmatic. He does not suggest abandoning physical exertion. In fact, he outlines a rigid physical mandate. Because yoga handles the software, you absolutely still must go to the gym or the track or the dojo to handle the hardware.
So what are the actual pillars of this physical mandate?
There are 3 pillars yoga intentionally does not cover. Pillar 1 is stretching. Not spiritual yoga stretching, but biomechanical stretching to maintain the elasticity of muscle fibers.
Okay, elasticity.
Pillar 2 is cardiovascular exercise, placing a sustained demand on the heart muscle and circulatory system.
And pillar 3?
Strength training. Progressive mechanical overload to tear and rebuild muscle tissue and drive bone density.
Stretching, cardio, and strength. But Osman points out a huge behavioral trap here, mono-training.
Right. Human nature looks for the path of least resistance. People find one modality they tolerate and they exclusively do that.
The person who only jogs or only lifts weights or
Only does yoga. Osman heavily critiques this. If you only jog, your upper body atrophies. If you only lift weights, your heart isn't conditioned for endurance and your fascia gets rigid.
you leave massive gaps in your physical armor. So what's his solution?
He highly recommends high-intensity intermittent training, or HIIT, because it spikes the heart rate for cardio adaptation while requiring explosive muscular output for strength.
Yay.
It compresses the stress of both into one potent sequence.
Let me jump in for the listener who is feeling totally overwhelmed right now.
That's a lot, yeah.
I'm hearing I need to meditate for higher intelligence, do subtle energy yoga for my operating system, biomechanical stretching, HIIT, and strength training. If someone cannot execute this perfect multidisciplinary routine, what is Osman's absolute bare minimum?
Walking.
Just walking.
He is incredibly clear on this. If you strip away the gym and the complex routines, you must walk, because walking engages the legs, which house the largest muscle groups in the body. The glutes, quads, hamstrings,
Why do large muscles matter so much for a baseline?
metabolic sync capacity, and venous return. Brisk walking demands massive glucose, which regulates blood sugar, and the leg muscles act as a secondary heart. Every contraction physically squeezes deep veins, pumping deoxygenated blood back up against gravity.
The skeletal muscle pump. It physically assists the heart.
Exactly. It keeps the baseline metabolic and circulatory engine turning over.
Okay, so we have this profound dichotomy. On one side, the aggressive physical stress of the gym, or HIIT, sympathetic nervous system adaptation. On the other side, subtle energy yoga, parasympathetic, vagal nerve soothing. How do we schedule this without them neutralizing each other?
This is where Osman's personal protocol is a masterclass. He references his childhood, noting he had teachers who ingrained a very specific rule, keep the modalities completely separate.
No mixing, no power yoga or HIIT flows.
Absolutely no mixing. In his youth, Osman relied on martial arts for physical conditioning. When he was on the mat, his focus was 100% speed, force, and cardio.
Yeah.
Pure layer 1 conditioning.
Joe Rogan talks about this constantly on the Joe Rogan Experience.
Yeah.
The absolute necessity of functional, intense MMA conditioning, but then fiercely protecting your recovery.
Yes, because of the interference effect. In sports science, if you lift weights to build muscle, you activate the mTOR pathway for growth. If you immediately do exhaustive cardio, you activate the AMPK pathway, which breaks down tissue.
They chemically inhibit each other.
Exactly. And the same logic applies to the nervous system. If your yoga class is a 60-minute sweat-drenched flow, your sympathetic system is screaming.
But the postures are trying to signal the vagus nerve to drop your heart rate. You're slamming the gas pedal and ripping the emergency brake at the same time.
Biological whiplash. The physical workout isn't intense enough to trigger true muscle adaptation, and the yoga is too stressful to tune the nervous system.
So Osman's protocol eliminates the conflict.
Completely. He provides a blueprint. Begin with a warm-up and stretching sequence, strictly limited to 5 or 10 minutes. Purely mechanical preparation. Immediately transition into the combined strength and cardio HIIT sequence. Spike the stress, force the adaptation, and you're done. Physical mandate fulfilled.
And then?
Reserve a completely separate time later in the evening or early morning for subtle energy tuning, yoga and meditation, without the demand of physical exhaustion.
This reminds me of how Tony Robbins and Deepak Chopra talk about holistic health. They approach the physical body's needs as distinct from the mind's needs, but recognize they interact. You have to feed both, but with different nutrients.
Exactly. You wouldn't need a plate of just protein and say you have a balanced diet. You need physical protein from HIIT and subtle energy vitamins from yoga.
It is incredibly clarifying to hear an expert of Osman's caliber give us permission to stop trying to make yoga do everything.
And this scientific approach is exactly what he teaches. I highly recommend listeners visit yogawellness786.com to access his free resources.
Yeah, that free 5-minute program is a perfect entry point. And remember, he has that Patreon for paid daily live videos and group sessions if you want to go deeper.
But he doesn't withhold the core knowledge. It's all there on his YouTube. He spent 50 years trying to simplify these complex protocols to achieve real results easily.
Which is a beautiful mission. So, zooming out on this entire deep dive, the implications are staggering. We started by dismantling the idea that yoga is just a stretching routine or calorie burner.
Osman completely shattered that, revealing it as an ancient technology for internal organ reconditioning, vagus nerve stimulation, and tuning the Layer 2 operating system.
We explored the architecture of the self, the five koshas, moving past the physical hardware and the conscious mind to the untapped potential of Layer 4 and 5.
And we confronted the uncomfortable reality that by ignoring subtle energy, we're trapped on power saver mode, leaving 95% of our intuitive capacity dormant.
But we grounded it in physical reality. Awakening the soul body doesn't excuse you from the physical mandate. You still need cardio, strength, or at least walking.
You must honor both the physical hardware and the subtle software, keeping them fiercely distinct.
It changes the entire paradigm of what it means to be in shape. So, as we wrap up today, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. Not about your workout routine, but your cognitive architecture.
It's a vital question.
If 95% of your potential is lying dormant simply because your nervous system is too loud to hear your intuition, what massive, life-altering decisions are you currently making with a completely clouded mind? Are the choices you're struggling with actually that complex, or are you just trying to process reality with a throttled operating system?
Something we all need to seriously evaluate.
Until next time, keep digging deeper.